presents to you Honest Talk.
Hi folks. Today we are back with one more great and leading personality, Mr. Nikhil Malhotra, Chief Innovation Officer, TechMahindra. Nikhil Malhotra is the Chief Innovation Officer and creator of Makers Lab, a unique Thin-q-bator space within TechMahindra with 20 plus years of experience. Nikhil has been a researcher all his life and is now leading the growth of AI, machine learning, robotics and quantum research within TechMahindra. Nikhil's area of personal research has been how quantum computing and neuroscience has inspired the growth of AI and how the two fields can merge in the future. Nikhil has also designed an indigenous robot in his lab. As a personal assistant, the current bets he has undertaken is how quantum can give us better cancer drugs, guns and their application for languages and space tech. One of his vision is to enable machines to talk in local Indian dialect. There are 1,645 dialects in India and 26 mother tongues, and 80% of Indian population does not speak English. Nikhil researching on Sanskrit and how this ancient Indian language could sow the seed for the next computer revolution. So, let's begin our talk with our today's guest, Mr. Nikhil Malhotra.
So first of all, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much, sir, for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us. We are extremely very happy to have you for today's talk.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, sir. It's our pleasure too. So, sir, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is when a crisis becomes an opportunity. A culture of innovation fuels business resilience and economic recovery. Sir, I want to know your thoughts. What do you believe? How one can find opportunities within a crisis?
No, so I think first of all, thank you so much for giving this opportunity. But I think this pandemic has possibly shown us how you can actually find. This was more a crisis, as in a existential world crisis, where everyone went through. And I think the idea of finding an opportunity from a business perspective, from an economic recovery, I think comes secondary. What I would love to possibly state first is it's the idea of helping folks out during a crisis. And I think that itself presents an opportunity first for the society. So I think one of the ways and one of the barriers that we looked at and what we did within the TechMahindra innovation ecosystem was to find out ways in which we can possibly use technology. Because we are technological folks, anybody else can be anybody else who's doing some other work. We found an opportunity where technology could help the society. And I think once you start doing that, you automatically start finding those gaps which possibly could be filled up with some of the work that you do, whether it's an ISR, an individual social responsibility, whether it's a technological mode that you want to do as an organization. And that really finding out gaps translates into an opportunity for the future. So, and we found it, right? So for example, we were not virologists, we are not serologists, but we started studying the virus as soon as the virus hit. And we started finding out what can we do with AI on that virus. Now, at the end of the day, we had no value or no thought that this could become a commercial exercise or this could possibly lead us to a solution. But the idea was, can we help people who are in distress? So I think my point of looking at opportunities first to look at how society at large could possibly be evolved out of that crisis, and that pointer itself gives us a pointer to find out those opportunities.
All right, sir. It was quite insightful answer from your side, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, will be fruitful for them as well. Sir, my next question to you: what do you believe? What is the importance of innovation? What does it mean for business as well as for society?
So I think, Harsh, innovation is a very broad term, and I think innovation can be catered into a lot of senses, right? Number one, if you go with the actual definition of innovation, you can possibly define innovation into 3 or 4 categories. One of them being you sustain the innovation, so whatever you have been doing, you do it better. As in we call the run part of it. The second part is if you can possibly do a radical innovation, which basically means that you've been doing, you can actually just think out of the box and do something very, very different from it. And that's a radical part. So a radical thought comes in. And one of the criteria is disruptive innovation, something which has not seen or not been seen into the world. My ideology of innovation on the facet, what I do, stems from a very single word. And that single word is called courage. That courage basically doesn't mean you have strength. It doesn't mean that you're strong enough. That courage really translates to a different facet. So the C of the courage really means collaboration. If you can collaborate not just with your peers, with your system and ecosystem, but also ecosystem at large, with academia, with businesses, with government, with folks who have an idea. First of all, there is no idea that is the wrong idea. So you should collaborate with almost everyone. So C becomes collaboration. O becomes objectification of what you want to do. So there has to be some thought in mind, some great goal, and you have to objectify it. You have to see it working in front of you to actually innovate something. So whether it's solving a problem for, let's say, a vaccine and drug research in COVID-19, or it's about, let's say, finding any other problem that you want to solve as a solution. So objectification. You basically translates into the English you, which is you are have to. So I think the other portion was you, which is you are the maker. So you are the person who can actually do it. And if you start having that result, innovation automatically comes in. You start thinking about those ideas. R for me in innovation means that you should rewire your psyche. And if you look at two organs that human beings possess, which are very different, one of them is the brain and the other one is the heart. The heart continues to pump blood almost every second moment involuntarily, whereas the brain needs a little bit of rewiring every single time. So when you innovate, you also rewire your brain's psyche to think something completely different. A is about asking stupid questions every day. So some people say that, why do you ask this question if you know the answer? My philosophy is that if you keep asking those questions, you keep simplifying the complex process that you are in. Right? And G basically means defining your goals. And you essentially say that I have a goal. So if you have to land on moon, you should have a goal of landing on Mars. And E basically means empathizing with yourself. And empathy basically really translates into facet that as innovators or as potential guys who want to innovate, there's a lot of potholes of destruction that you fall into. So you have to pick yourself up. As a result of that, you have to empathize with yourself. If you draw an analogy, if you go into a plane, the announcement that happens is, please put on your mask first in a scenario where the air pressure is before putting a mask on the infant, because you have to save yourself. So if you follow the word courage, that transcends itself into not just for businesses and not just for institutions, it also transcends itself for the society at large. So if I have to draw a larger picture of innovation, courage would be the innovation.
All right, sir. Sir, you have very beautifully described the types of innovation. Starting from types of innovation, basically there are three: sustained, radical, and disruptive. Then moving to the what actually requires is the courage to innovate something. And it was, I think, it's a kind of privilege that today we got a chance to listen all these things from you. Sir, my next question to you is, if we talk, I want to know your thoughts, sir. We are very well saying is that necessity is a mother of innovation. Sir, I want to know your thoughts over it.
Yeah, so I think necessity is the mother of both the invention and the innovation. And what better world to actually look at that necessity than the world that we sit in, which is India. I think if you look at India, and from my perspective, India I sometimes tend to call as the fringe of the world. And when I say fringe of the world, it is not a negative connotation. It is a positive connotation, meaning that any use case that you want to do today, whether it's for AI, for blockchain, whether it's for any technology, you will find it in India. And you would see that the necessity is creating a larger innovation use case in India itself. Now let's take some use cases or examples. First example I will tell you is language. Now, if you look at language today, and people say that AI has possibly solved the language structure, you have Amazon Alexa, you have Google, Google Home, etc., solving it. Well, they're solving a part of the language which is English. India, on the other hand, has 1645 dialects and 26 mother tongues. If I want to make a machine that understands all of this language at all go, we'll have to do it in a very, very different way. And the way that we look towards it from language perspective in our Makers Lab is basically looking at Sanskrit. So we are researching in Sanskrit. Now, as opposed to the myths and fallacies around Sanskrit saying and some of the pop stories that Sanskrit may be into, may have gone into NASA, you can do this, you can do that. Our research is very, very practical on the whole language of Sanskrit itself, which understands and gives what can we draw out. And it will never be spoken, of course, but can we use Sanskrit to have a translation layer between different languages? So if I give you a small figure of how much is there, the least connected language from Sanskrit, which is Tamil, is 71% connected to Sanskrit. There's 71% similarity. Punjabi has about 80 to 90% similarity. Bengali has 86% similarity. Marathi has about 84% similarity. With all of that similarity, the Sanskrit, which basically translates into Samskrit, which is well-formed language, has gone into a Prakrit mode the way you and I speak, which is natural language. Now, doesn't it make sense that Sanskrit also formulates the basis of some translation? Now, this is a necessity now. Necessity because technology will reach different parts of the country. Different parts of the country have different dialects. Can we not look at an innovation which is very, very different from inside out of the country as well, to give it to the world? Like, for example, Google gave or Amazon gave, etc. And that's an example of one necessity being the mother of invention. Should we have an invention? We should definitely on that line. Secondly, today with my role and my connection to, let's say, a large corporate of bodies, I find that the rural sector, there's a larger innovation than the urban sector because the necessity seems to be higher. And this also corroborates to your point that necessity is the mother of invention. And I'll give you just one example, which will give you, this is basically a program that is run by the Atal team, Atal Tinkering Labs and Atal Innovation, a program that is called SIP, which is Student Innovation Program. Or in other ways, it says from school to society. One of the students or one of the schools that we have entrusted this amongst the 5 schools in India had a very interesting use case. The interesting use case was that the teacher and the students used to walk 45 kilometers in a village in Bihar to educate themselves. And in that region of Bihar, where we are essentially talking, a large percentage of kids are malnutrition, as in they do not get enough nutrition. One day, by serendipity or by some choice, somebody dropped a grain of red saag, green saag, and bajra on the piece of land, and the leaves that out of it, they are actually making a juice and they're giving it. 99% of malnutrition is finished. Now, necessity is the mother of innovation. There was a necessity to solve a problem, and these kids really came out with some problems, and they are now being monitored and mentored by us. But in a large sector, India has the biggest corroboration of this statement, where a large amount of necessity is creating a larger innovation in the sector.
All right, sir. Again, you have very beautifully cleared the term, the real meaning of the term, how necessity is a mother of innovation. Sir, my next question to you, or rather say, we all know, sir, you are working with one of the well-known organization. Sir, I want to know how you foster innovation and creativity within your organization.
So, Harsh, my story with my organization, TechMahindra, is I'll just relate the story. I before joining this organization, TechMahindra, I was working with IBM, and I was of a little group which also worked with the Watson team. So my tryst with technology and AI started off with obviously IBM Watson before I joined TechM. And TechM, I was there in different parts of roles, and from 2010 to 14, I was in US, and I saw the culture there. I understood what was going on. But 2014, I decided to come back to India. There were 2 reasons, of course. I had a little one who was born, but also I saw that the condition in India had changed. The government was really pushing forward for innovation, was really putting forward for startups. And also there was a new vigor which was coming in within the country saying that we want to do something of our own. So I came back to India and I started something called as the Makers Lab. And the story of Makers Lab is that when I wanted to make a lab, we had loads of buildings. We are in Pune, we are in Delhi. We could actually utilize a lot of buildings. And this was the foresight for my chief operating officer, Mr. L. Ravichandran, who actually got me in and he said, you see that wet kitchen over there? And that wet kitchen was actually wet kitchen. They used to wash utensils in a small room, which was actually outside of any building at that point in time, obviously within the campus. I took that room over because it had a garage-like feel. And the garage-like feel was really telling us that we could innovate, we could build something new, we could solve problems in a different way. So we get into the lab, the first day we decided, okay, let's do something unique. We did not know the meaning of unique, we did not know what we were going to do. But we were just sitting and discussing. We said, let's make a bike that stands on its own. See, TechMahindra is not in a business of bikes. We are not making bikes. But the idea was, can we do something in robotics? So where do we get a bike? We were, of course, driving cars. We did not have bikes. So we got a bike from our home, unscrambled it, scrambled it, put sensors, did it for 3 months, nothing happened. We were a complete failure. But what that failure and feedback taught us was that if we could take this objectification of technology every time forward, we will do well. So what we did at the end of those 3 months, we took that bike and we hung up on our wall. So that bike still stands in the Pune wall. If you come to Pune Makers Lab, you will see that bike hanging and it's now colored black over there. But that's the first reminder for us to say that objectify technology in a big way. Now, once we started doing these experiments, once we started looking at technology, it also dawned upon a larger associate group of TechMahindra that yes, we can go into the lab and we can foster this structure. Because, everybody wants to get into something new, and the Makers Lab was giving them this something new to actually tinker. So this really started and fueled the culture of innovation within TechMahindra. And as a result of that, people essentially started utilizing the lab, going to the lab, doing a lot of stuff, etc. Second thing that we did was we said, when we do this, should we not give, before we give to our customers any of our products and IPs, should we not utilize it internally first? Because this is also a mechanism of objectification. People will use it, people will understand it, people will find 100 faults into it. But over a period of time, that product will become better. So that is another process that we started doing as a system. Then we started calling kids. So we started doing a mechanism called Kidathon, where 7 to 14-year kids, we will call up after every 6 months to the lab. And the whole idea was, even though we are old enough, we can think a lot of things. These kids can have a kind of a structure which is very different. And one of our ideas of a robot came from a little kid who was 7 to 8 years old, who came to the lab. And we just used to open up technology in the lab. We just used to tell them, go ahead with it, go ahead and try a lot of things. And they would come up with loads of different ideas. And these kids' ideas were unique in the sense that they did not have any barriers. There were no barriers of commercialization. There were no barriers of money. They were basically giving a true idea from their heart. So we started utilizing those ideas as well. So from a kid's perspective. So this is how the culture of innovation was fueled in. So people started realizing that there's one door in which you can get into, which is the Makers Lab, and you can start thinking and believing in your idea and start making it.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your journey to TechMahindra and also the story behind Makers Lab. It's really very great to listen all these things, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, it will inspire them as well. Sir, my next question to you is how technology is changing the way we live, learn, and work?
So it's fundamentally changing the way we look at the world today, Harsh. For example, and technology is not new. The moment the first industrial revolution happened with the starting of, let's say from a technological standpoint, an electrical bulb, technology has been there in our lives, helping us in different ways. We are obviously going to the fourth industrial revolution, but picture yourself standing and close your eyes for a little while. If I can ask the viewers, take yourself back 1800s or 1850s and 60s, and you are in New York across the river, and on the other side of the river, you see light sparkle when the first electric bulb was turned on. Imagine that part of technology, and people up till that time, everything was dark and we used to use lanterns. Since the time the electric bulb was invented, technology has taken us leaps and bounds. We've built factories, we've gone into an industrial age, we've gone into a second industrial revolution for everything that we've done. India has seen an agricultural revolution during that same time, and now we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Technology will give us the facet of changing a large perspective of what we do, and will continue to happen, provided we keep a balance in what we can do with technology and what we cannot. Today, giving an example of what we are sitting today, pandemic hit us in February 2020. And by January or March 2021, we are already expecting that a vaccine should come up, right? Or vaccine would be. If it was about 15-20 years back, it would have taken almost about 5 to 10 years for a vaccine to drop up, only because you had to collect a large amount of data, you had to understand a large amount of symptoms, and you had to look at what you could do with a vaccine and do the trials. Today, technology, specifically AI, is helping us essentially leapfrog that system and go much further beyond to help community, right? We are all very hopeful that the vaccine will come out next year, But if you go just a little deep behind it today, and you would find out that particular, in order to get to that vaccine, the whole technological system really churned itself. There were scientists, there were engineers, there were developers who were working behind it. Second example today is a kisan who's actually, or a farmer who's sitting in the farmland today, at some point in time, 10, 15 years back, had no clue whether he could control the prices of the crops that he sowed up. He had to sow the crop. He had to depend on a middleman to take his crop and produce to the market. And he had to really rely on the facet that I will get this much amount of money back. And this is all that I can get. Today, with the digital technologies opening up to actually the hinterland of the country, including farmers who have mobile phones, smartphones, feature phones, both, can utilize technology to control their own systems. In fact, as a government practice, which you will see as Atmanirbhar Krishi system that has started up, will give a farmer a whole lot of other connections as well in this technology, saying that I can control I can know what my soil is, I can know what my weather pattern is, I can understand what my yield is going to be, etc., etc. So technology is helping in that scenario as well, which was not possible fundamentally in the past as well. Today, you and I are having a call on this platform, and the reason has been telecom as well as connectivity. Otherwise, this COVID-19 virus and we getting news and we getting huddled up in our houses would have been absolutely detrimental for our mental health as well. But only because of this, we're able to see the world, we're able to open up a window to the outside world. Now, this is the positive impact of technology. Technology definitely can have a negative impact, and we are seeing some effects as well. One of the negative impacts that we are seeing on technology is for kids. When you open up a larger sector of internet, when you open up a larger sector of data for kids, you might have a lot of bad influences coming in for kids as well. And that's why, in a nutshell, technology will be beneficial for humankind, provided we keep a balance of sorts with the technology and the usage of technologies.
All right, sir. Again, it was really a quite insightful answer from your side. Sir, my next question to you is, what can be the role of innovation and technology on entrepreneurship, especially in developing countries?
So we are already seeing that effect, Harsh, right? We are seeing a large number of startups being generated in India. We're seeing a large set of startups who are innovative enough and finding out a problem from, let's say, smart cities not being there, and finding out some little gaps in smart cities, to healthcare, to even in sectors like space. You have enough startups that have opened up in the country as well as in other sectors of the developing nations world, where technology and innovation are going hand in hand to solve this problem. So that sector is definitely going to increase and improve. And with a younger generation like yours and many others coming up in this world, the ideology would also be that if I can make it, I can also earn money on it, which also breeds in a large number of entrepreneurial culture and set as well. It was, I would not say it was impossible, but it was very, very difficult about 10, 15 years ago to actually set up an entrepreneurial business, to set up a venture, look for funds, because data was constricted, the connection to the world was restricted, you had lesser amount of opportunities as well. Today, with technology opening up a lot of borders, that sector has been completely wiped off. Now, young kids, when they come up from colleges, etc., about 40% of the kids in the colleges are saying that I want to become an entrepreneur, I want to make my own business, I want to do what I want to do, and not work for an organization. I think that's the change that innovation and entrepreneurship is doing. And innovation, as you see in India and the developing nations, number of use cases are large to solve. It's not a generic use case that once you solve a traffic signal problem in one part of the city, you should solve it for the entire country. That's not the case. Today, if a traffic signal problem in Pune is set to let's say X, the traffic signal problem in a small town, let's say in Jalna, would be 2 times X or 10 times X. It requires a different approach as well. So that use case is generating innovation. That innovation is actually generating entrepreneurship in India and the developing nations.
All right, sir. I think there is a lot to learn from your definition of innovation, but we have very limited time for this session. I don't want to take you much time today. Sir, my last question of this session is, I want to know, what are your thoughts, what do you believe over the future of entrepreneurship?
So I think entrepreneurship is definitely there to grow us. The only thing is that we will again have to see as to how do we and what is the problem that we are solving when we become an entrepreneur. The challenge today that we see is that a lot of startups are coming up, but a lot of startups are also failing because the use case might be very restrictive. My suggestion to all the budding entrepreneurs over there would be that you spend some time in the corporate. Spend some time while learning the tricks of how the world really works in large corporates, and then decide after being 2 or 3 years over there whether you want to become an entrepreneur. If you have already decided and you've got that, you sometimes say you've got that itch to become an entrepreneur, then do dive in before you settle down in life. So if entrepreneurship also has a challenge when you are settled in life, when you're married, when you've got kids, there's a larger connotation and it takes a larger inertial force to actually bring an entrepreneurial venture. If you want to get into it, do get into it after your college. The entrepreneurial journey is there for you to exceed. There's going to be a lot more, entrepreneurs that we want in India, a lot more people who are creating jobs rather than serving jobs. But if you are a little shy of getting into that entrepreneurial venture, I would suggest, and you're still thinking, my suggestion is go into a corporate, spend some 3-4 years, take a look at that life, and then decide whether you want to get into an entrepreneurial journey. But it's definitely there for you to increase. Yes.
Indeed, sir. It was really a very great advice from your side. I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, of course, it will be beneficial for them. And sir, thank you so much, sir, for joining. I think it was really a very healthy discussion with you over the topic. We look forward to conduct more sessions with you in future. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Harsh, and thank you. Stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.